the weight of meaningless ponder, in the face of impossible time, with no sense of connection to anything by Jeremiah Dillon. Introduction. In all of man's pursuits to know the truth, he is tainted by his own innate nature. His understanding is flawed, because it is corrupted by self-centered realization, which directly infects all his other perceptions. No matter how genuine or sincere a man's intentions are, he is still an alien to the harmony that he senses is natural and rightful to his being, yet mysteriously absent. Man, because his understanding of truth is influenced by his bias, opinion, and experience, is not capable of seeing complete truth. Superstition and religion are equally flawed, as they are constructed and based on the ground of their many masters, man, whose mind and understanding are incomplete and incapable of knowing perfect truth. Making the models that man presents and calls reality, attempts only at accurately representing his reality's true construction. All the while, all that he proclaims to be true and reality is a fictitious misrepresentation, unless statement is made first that what he will say is an opinion, in which case he is true to himself. Sorting through the lights, man is an elaborate and vast stretch of corruption and lice. 7 continents, many countries, far more chiefs and leaders than I could hope to count, all versed and raised up in the language and defining perceptions of their predecessors. A language born of want, desire, physical intuition, and ambition, and glued together when faced with ignorance, by superstition, myth, and guesswork. The truth that man sees is an illusion. The truth that is eludes him. I seek the truth that is. There is one truth. That is. It includes us. The state of its being is, regardless of opinion, bias, or human perception. It is complete. It is flawless. It, the truth, is the permeation of its own self, and all that is, end to end, resides in, is created by, is concluded by, is supervised by, and is survived by the truth. All else is either illusion or disillusion, an incomplete representation of fact, or else a complete false representation that has been portrayed as truth, but lacks such real integrity as it supposes to have. The challenge of man, is to know the truth, and to know himself. A knowledge, never known, and always realized, manifested to his person by his connection to idea. Where simple words and suspicions are not mere expressions of idea, but the idea itself has become the expression and identity of self. Stating to an extent that we are who we are, by our personal attachment and understanding to all the pieces of thought and understanding we have, as being mostly unique, but common. Being alien and segregated from all things, self and expression are one's own reality, the projection of their thoughts and feelings and presence, within a range of their opportunity and their limits. Self exists only to personal awareness, where being is the reach, the limit, and the declaration of expression that includes self-awareness, but is extended to personal projection. Such is the objective of this book. To express myself, through range and limit. Chapter 1. Whatever I am, we are aware. We experience reality consciously. We interact with reality, and reality reacts to us and interacts with us. Seasons touch us. Planets move us. The oceans bath us. The moon and lights us. And everything around us either brings us aggravation, peace, or enjoyment. We are not human alone, as interacting with human culture or society alone. We are immeasurably part of everything. We are born from the fabric of the universe, made from the smallest bits of reality. The universe is a part of us, of our person, of our body. Our existence is crafted from the bowels of the existence itself, from its own components. They have been sewn together and turned into the bodies we inhabit. But we and our awareness are a mystery. Inside this cage, all are trapped, stuck in this time, in this place, unable to transition space at will, unable to do, be, and see as we will, unable to project ourselves to the corners of the world, by power of will. Everything around us is mechanical. All of it. Why? Why stuck? Why limited? Why are we? Why do we exist? Is there a reason? These are reasonable queries. But no one can answer me. At least not without arguing with someone else about their take on the matter. Why has the truth abandoned us? Man without truth is like a caged animal, pitted against another caged animal. Viciously, they will fight each other, neither improving the situation. Ignorance is inherent. The ability to reason, deduce, and problem solve is also inherent. Questions and answers. I don't believe that any question exists without an answer. The answer may not immediately be comprehended, but it does exist. I believe that all questions and all answers are equal to the same product, that product being equivalent. I believe that reality, in whole, is home to all existence, and therefore, is home to all fact. That makes all fact, reality, and states that unknowns, are facts not yet realized by human consciousness, but otherwise, still fact. Missing pieces, to seek what is, and divide it from what is not, is a part of being human. It's a conscious ramification, an instinct forced on us by the mystery of our being born without the answers. I didn't ask to be here. I was born into a world I did not create, subject to laws existent in the universe before my own existence began. I was given no choice for parents or siblings. I had no part in the genetic construction of my own body. Crippled or deformed, I had no choice. To what part of the world I would be born, and the leaders therein, I had no choice. Nor had I the choice for what I would be taught by those here on the earth before me. That my infant and adolescent self would be dependent for survival on those mentally and physically matured to the world, that had I no choice in. At no time, over any detail concerning my birth, did I have voice. I did not ask to be here. Yet, here, is where I am, abandoned at birth, to realize myself, and make manifest, my internal being, into this external world, is the challenge that being born stranded me with. Till death, we're dying. Every breath we take is a step toward death. We can't help it. We can't stop it. Not breathing isn't an option, but a waste of precious time. It forces my recognition and my respect. It demands a certain level of attention, compelling me to explore the questions of self. Who am I? And what did I believe? And is what I believe true? I have one life, a set number of breaths, and only one chance to be, and do whatever it is I'll be or do. Life, lifelong, I have a certain but unknown frame of time to which I will be. That course, its navigation and destination are mine to answer. Its longevity, being however long I shall exist, is mine to travel, but not fully mine to decide. That includes all circumstance, and situation, and stimulus that make contact with my presence, not just my own self-induced response and interaction. What that means, is that it will always be me, and my life, and my decisions, and my person, and my well-being. The dark death. To embrace ignorance is to die a dark death, giving self to nothing. I don't want to give my life and my soul to the dark of ignorance. I want to know, moment last, that what I have spent my life believing to be true, is true, not a lie, lifelong embraced. Who am I? Each person is born an individual, having the power of free will. With it, comes profound obligation to being self-consciously aware of our own beliefs and opinions, and the consequence to our choices and actions. To ignore the power and responsibility of free will, is itself a choice, chosen, and not an only human handicap. We are human. We are power. We are choice. We are the one possible future, answer of self, and strength of soul, that will ever exist to us. Self is a variable equation. Who we are, is an open question, that because of choice, must be closed. Option, mandates direction, direction mandates selection, selection mandates choice, which leaves no other choice, but to choose. An intimate process, self-declaration is a form of personal interrogation, in which we communicate with our self-conscious, reason and evaluate the surrounding world, and then make appropriate decisions based on our findings, and how they relate to our own well-being. Self, is a riddle of choice, question meets answer, go left or go right. Morally, psychologically, physically. Every time we have to choose, we ask ourselves, who am I? And every time, We've chosen, we've answered. What am I? My mind is superficial, the go-between will and action. My body is unimportant, does what I say, and isn't me. So I must be neither mind nor body. And yet, I control both mind and body, making me some kind of living control, some kind of living power. If there is any such thing as soul, then I must be that very thing. The soul. I am more than a name. What power has a name? It's a label for others to address and identify us. It's what they say when they talk about us. It's a tag, our designation from birth. We wear it like collars, like stamped property. It does nothing more. Accomplishes nothing more. Cannot speak for us, and say, this is who I am, or this is what I believe. It fails to have life of its own. I, who I am, is alive. I am living. I have thoughts and dreams and emotions. I am a person. I am a soul. I am more than a name. I am more than animal. Mankind shares all the basic senses of awareness that our cousins in the animal kingdom have: sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, memory of experience, and emotional self-consciousness. But it is our intellectual and spiritual awareness that set us apart. As a species, we have the power of artistic creativity, mathematics deduction, the ability to choose principle over will and instinct, to reason right from wrong, comprehend invisible factors, express any number of feeling or emotion through organized communication, contemplate dimension, apply science, assign classification on basis of fact, principle, characteristic, and property, as opposed to general experience, and revere the pure holiness of life, its beginning and sustaining. All life is special, but human life is blessed, and should be profoundly respected. What makes a man, a man? If you take everything away from a man, his friends, his family, his home, you will be left with the one thing in life that makes him who he is: his soul. In death, all else will remain, surrendered back to the world he borrowed them from. Man is the substance of choice, the manifestation of will and reserve. Painted choices. There is a wonderful thing about paint. Applied to a canvas it becomes a moving reality, touching places of a person that no hand can go, and no eye can see. But without an artist, it can do nothing. Each day is like a blank canvas, pure and pristine, and shouldn't be taken for granted. No man has yet taken her innocence or wet her being. Choice, acting like a paintbrush, creates every property of the reality we paint for ourselves. The picture of yesterday was painted by the choices of yesterday. Today's picture has been painted by the choices we've yet to paint with, while yesterday's painting does echo its reality to us today. The colors and lines we paint today with have their own strokes. We can reflect on yesterday's painting, see the wrong and right, and paint today educated by the choices of yesterday. It's our power as artists to paint our own world. But the canvas is the person of ourself. With our heart turned in on itself, we reflect outward what we dare call self. Heart. Our heart is confined, trapped in the world of its own substance. It resides in isolation, lonely, contrast, and definitively home. To the world that surrounds it, it is invisible, showing only glimpses of its actual person. An incomplete and limited picture. It cannot come in contact with anyone or anything outside its sphere of being. It has one possession, and one ally, itself, only. Who it is. Its love, its hate, its integrity, its anger. And the sad knowledge that no one can see it. No one can hear it. And no one can feel its true person. Separated entirely, but very much a living being, our heart lives its entire life, alone, in a realm of reality by itself. Removed from the world, and absent of physical senses. It is forced to acknowledge self, to define, explore, and realize who it is. The only true power it has. Beliefs. Beliefs are meant to limit. They're meant to counter the complexity of being so insignificant when standing alone against the unknown powers of the universe. They're meant to balance self's relationship with the factors that make up this big place called reality. They're meant to help the heart keep beating when the soul says no more, and the mind to trust when the body can't do it. They're meant to bring self to purpose and purpose to self. They're meant to be our companions through life when no one else is there, and our best friend when no one else seems to care. Beliefs too. You can believe based on your senses, but those are limited to self. You can believe based on factors, but those are limited to the difference between what is known and what is not. But either way, you face limitations, and will still have questions left to ask and answer. I believe it must be found, and that it is already, if I know it or not. And because it is, it exists, and I exist. And that makes I and the unknown answer exist. Because all exists in the same master existence. Together, in the same verse, even if not perceptible. The puzzle, all that we experience in the solitude of self and being. Though it feels grand and stretched, it is never outside ourself. Questions are the response of our ignorance. We face reality as one who knows nothing and needs to know much. We live in reality, but we are not conscious of its vast contents. Piece by piece, a puzzle takes shape. We begin to notice more and more of reality, gaining answers to our questions. We are not learning the puzzle of reality. It is reality already, and already established. We are learning our place, growing in opinions and perceptions, growing the world within our person. Conscience, reality, is reality. The straightforward fact. A rock is a rock. A babbling brook is a babbling brook. A solar system is a solar system. A field of golden grass is a field of golden grass. Reality is. It has no argument. Man is straightforward only in death, birth, and form. His conscience is not a realm of fact. It's a realm of argument, where the battle of right and wrong takes place. The battle that is spilled over into the realm of reality, where the world that surrounds man is affected by his own inner turmoil. And creatures untold are moved by the force of man's decision and indecision both. Right and wrong, argument, is the only determining factor in the structured settlement of the reality that is in man's mind. It cannot be solved by ration or reason alone. Elements of argument themselves. It must contend with itself. Has no choices without cost. And each bears a cross. Unloosing the counsel of man's person. Who will weigh in on every decision? The mind, the heart, and the soul. Each man is required by his conscience to resolve right from wrong, to erect a parameter of separation, and to identify the unknowns as either or, to the best of his conscious ability. The conscience is an aspect of consciousness that is aware of the effects and outcomes of actions upon self, others, and reality. As potentially harmful or beneficial, it recognizes that self is able to purpose harm, intend benefit, and / or be self-concerned instead. Conscience is a graphic file system of category and index that evaluates everything, all the time, like an antivirus program, to the point of keeping self from an ignorance of his or her actions. Conscience allows mankind to have a purpose, a self-definable purpose, that he wasn't born with. We are required. We are required, not by self, but by requirement. It exceeds us, surrounding us in every direction, with its origin, not in the person of man. We are required to act. Action is required. Anytime choice or temptation are presented to us, action is our response. Often, the reflection of dominate natures. But not all responses are the expressions of private will or nature. We are required to choose. We can choose. We are not obligated to be selfish. We can elect. We can cause. We can sacrifice. By conscious design, we can put the welfare of others before ourselves. We can set into motion repercussion, intention, and circumstance that benefit others, and cause, for sake of the cause. We are required to be. To be, cause, is, cause. By being the essence of the motion, that is our will, and that is willed. We are required to reject. We can choose the correct things of God over our own will. We can reject will. We can reject self. We can reject nature. With strength, effective and thorough, to the overthrowing of natural chains. We are required to warn. Man is a creature of opposition and warn. with himself, and able to be one person at any one time. Self, or self-successor. He cannot exceed the moment, and he cannot escape the responsibility of his expression and person to the defining of who he is, in the essence of the moment, as it is required of him to be. Principle is his dwelling place. Fear is his dwelling place. Belief is his dwelling place. Responsibility is his dwelling place. And he must choose where he will dwell, even if it is to run from all requirement. In his indecision and in his fear, we are not excused, we cannot impede requirement. It remains, and it continues to require us, despite our will, despite our objection, despite our deception, despite our various degrees of apathy, despite our many forms of camouflage. The complex universe of personal reality, the mind, is manifested into consciousness from nothing. Void is rich, and contrast to its essence. It has nothing of substance or inheritance. It is finite, non-existent if not for its sensitive recognition to an awareness that will be known forever as self. From its start, self-awareness is defeated. It is overwhelmed, and it is devastated. Human awareness is a landscape of disaster, filled with the broken and charred remains of a pre-existent reality. Full-scale battles rage upon its crumbled ghost. Fierce and countless wars, fought in fractions of a second, that pit man's own thoughts and feelings against themselves. Awareness is a reality, and that reality is unique within man, to the individual. All of humanity is aware. The machine-like quality, if not for personality, as all can be aware, individually. But it is our personal awareness that separates the generic fact of awareness from private interpretations, intuitions, and objectives. There is individual awareness, and there is personal awareness. Individual awareness, it is a technical overlay to our understanding that differs from personal understanding. Individual awareness is an impersonal observation of what island facts, factors, and all manner of tangible realities that require nothing of sentiment, judgment, or reflection. It's the view from practical and technical vantage points. Personal reality, it is the truth of a man's conscience, his heart, his soul, his feelings, his life. It is the world within, as he sees it, and not as it is, without him. Man is not capable of knowing the universe, all within it, and the truth of self. Instead, he is forced to recognize patterns and aspects, note relationships between things, and interpret those notes, and those recognitions, and figure out who he and she island. It's a mostly straightforward task that merely manages the facts of reality, as they've been observed. But the challenge is in the essence that inhabits reality. Reality is not lifeless, it's full of life. It's not straightforward, it's moving. The universe that's born anew every second of every day, by consequences, circumstances, and truths. Consequence is the result of effect, and effect is the property of no one. It is as limitless as the sky, stretching from yin to yin, with benefit and gain, a possibility, and with harm and destruction, a possibility. Possibility is a variable, the free-roaming variable, that upsets the scale of static reality, and introduces the need of human awareness to alter its perception, changing technical observation into careful consideration. From this meditation and this experience, man propagates a mental model of reality, the tree of rules, laws, morals and relationships, representative of observed and anticipated consequences and possibilities. Man is not an element of awareness that is tuned into the expanse of existence. He is an isolated consciousness, with only his awareness to reality, alertness to detail, intuition, and deduction to aid his stance. A crutch, that man can shift a portion of his weighted person to reality. Reality is a single fact, in any direction, multiplied or divided, layer within layer within layer, interacting and reacting with and to the infinity of reality's substance. Reality is a fact, whole and inhabited. It is an untouchable wall of black mystery that humanity cannot conceive or understand. Relevant reality, man is reality. He becomes it. His mind and his person introspectively create an internal montage of existence that changes to accommodate the changes in reality itself. The mind relates itself to reality, and reality to it, where the two are factually indifferent, rendering relevance and associating preference, prerogative, and value. His person, altering the facts of cold reality to include private personality, instituting the world of personal reality, the only reality that he can perceive, as he experiences it, interprets it, and interacts with it. What surrounds man is infinite, and what man knows is equally infinite, nothing. He is as he is born, lost in the endless universe of his own ignorance. Personal reality is man's only compass, his only truth. Chapter 2. Awareness. Awareness is the conglomeration of all sense. It is also the person, regardless of any practical senses, the hub of their conscious reality, prior to all influence and development, and also the articulation of all learning, development, and conscious growth. Awareness includes all capacity of sense, physical, intellectual, emotional, and personal. Physical awareness is the map of all sensitive existence on or in a person's physical body. Intellectual awareness is the array of ration, reason, and understanding. It is also the conscious directory of information and learning, and the infrastructure of our internalized recognition of reality. Emotional awareness is dynamic, and includes affectionate, traumatic, and anxious persuasion, and teeters in both intensity and framework according to how well our relationship is to any state of interaction, sentiment, or thought, and how we perceive these relationships. We can remain emotionally well, while ignorant of facts that would otherwise topple our sense of trust, truth, or security, by being lulled or misled by a sense of security, or a misrepresentation of truth. Personal awareness includes principle, belief, and sentiment, as relate to regard, concern, and consideration. Awareness overall is mostly one-sided. The bombardment of our senses with endless data, experienced without prejudice or preference, processed, analyzed across many filters of conscious objection, taste, and agreement, and represented to our person as something to disregard, inspect, or personalize. The difference between this raw data and the redirected and redistributed information is the innate prerogative of our person. Our person is the standard we make in response to this wall of information. It's the personal reality of our identity, moral, and character. The foundational elements of self. And instantly and subconsciously this foundation screens every piece of data that we encounter. Perception versus perspective. 2 points of observation, often confused for the other, but very different in their advantage. Perception includes articulate thought, comprehension, and overall awareness, but excludes emotion, belief, and all manner of opinion, judgment, and fantasy. Perspective is not entirely about self-orientation, but I take the liberty of adapting its essence, so that what it means to me is understood more clearly. It is the viewpoint of our person, as governed by our individual personality. It is how we relate to reality, where we stand in matters of the heart, the world, and life. It is our opinions, our reflections, our beliefs, as personally interpreted, felt, and identifiable. The way we look at reality, in all its possibility, mystery, and struggle. Sentiment is a peculiar and particular attraction toward something, exceeding affection or bond, that gravitates toward a private and personalized sensation, so that the object of attraction is less relative to the person or their bond than the way they feel, and the way they feel becomes more the companion of their person than the actual object of their affection. Sentiment differs from normal affection by being the source of its own comfort, where affection itself is more a directed or aimed passion. It is specific, but it also represents a person's general feeling for anything at all that has some measure of meaning to the person, such as a choice word, a favorite team, the time or place of mesmerizing experience or energy that is sealed forever in their memory, something special to them, or some simple comfort. Emotion is a state of being, as it is, in reflection and reaction to the world, where reflection and reaction are sensational and personal. It's a sensitivity, as much as any, as is relative to our person, and not to our body. It is not intelligence, but reacts to intellectual understanding. It is not perspective, but is stimulated by perspective. It is not communication, but is instigated by communication. It is not awareness, but is inspired by awareness. And while it is none of these, it is influential to all of them: intelligence, perspective, communication, and awareness. Selfishness is the active and persistent need of an individual to satisfy their every thought and longing, with disregard to others and their needs or desires. Characteristically, it is a person that hoards, where opportunity is present, instead of sharing with others, whose vanity dismisses concern for others, favoring self-interests. Self-mindedness is the basic response and responsibility of all individuals, as opposed to selfishness, as constituting the whole, rather than the individual. To be self-minded is to be human. It is the primary prerogative of the species to create identity, to preserve self, and to maintain individualism. This is the nature of every free-thinking life form. Selflessness, the empathetic nature of being concerned for others, as by a passive consideration of their well-being. Unity, as different from equality, it is a shared interests, shared welfare, shared empathy, and shared being. It is a membership, which differs from an organization, by being an organism, rather than a collection of parts. The union, organization, and congregation are not a unity, as these are not governed by a mutual spirit, but exists more closely to a rally of individuals with individual concerns, that choose to agree on a topic or point that suits them mutually, but not as a whole, whose person is consciously, spiritually, or biologically bound together, such as the body of Christ, a family, or a team, whose interests are the same. Empathy is the shared pain, emotional stress, and well-being of others, as sensationally experienced within our own person. It is not pity, nor sympathy, but the realized state of another, in our own person. If two sisters lose a brother or another sister, then they both experience the loss in their own way, but also feel the pain of the other. By love and concern, they hurt one for the other, wishing they could take the other's pain away. But it is not sympathy or pity that they experience. Sympathy is a conscious regard, a swelling of sincerity within our person that recognizes hardship or injustice or formidable challenge in the life of others, and immediately considers them with a sense of unfairness, and with stirred well-wishing for the person enduring them. We can feel sympathy for our enemies, recognizing the common humanity within us both, and knowing how we would feel. Sympathy is an automatic response to natural understanding of mutual humanity or person, which is lost to war, politics, and self-grandeur, by the reconditioning of our original person, to callous and selfish athleticism of concern and consideration. Logic, ration, reason, and equation. Ration is the ability to remain neutral, maintain calm, and approach problems, situations, or complications with self-control and collected disposition. Reason is the ability to judge wisely, considering all intelligent data, or all data, that by respect, is most important and most relevant. It is not an approach to something, but rather a relation of things to a justified field of measure, in both observation and argument. Logic is an all-inclusive forfeit of sentiment, in the interest of recovering, or discovering what is most likely true, even if absolute truth is yet an unknown. Logic is sound in its strategy of approach, and removed in its application of examination. Equation is a formula of constitution, in which an equation represents a particular whole. In that an entire of anything requires all of its pieces together to make a whole, whether by consideration or presence. What equals a whole is by any division or separation of parts an equation, a statement of completion, a resolution of parts to form a whole. Both 1 and 8, for example, are each whole by their respective considerations. And if I want to find out what constitutes a whole 8, I'd examine what I know about it, and work out what I can to solve the unknown parts. 5 and 3 equal 8. But 5 and 2 do not. Yet, 5 and 2 and 1 do equal 8. And so do 6 and 2. And 2 and 3 and 3. making any combination that equals 8 relevant to my search, and the rest irrelevant. By consideration, any unit of measure can be a whole, not in terms of whole numbers alone, but in terms of being wholly. What is whole? What is needed to make a whole? What is sought, or what satisfies a query? Such considerations, in solving an equation, can be as complex as knowing only one street name in a city of many streets, in which case, the unknown pieces of the equation are the street names not known. Reality is the ultimate equation. Belief is not theory, nor is it similar to theory. Both hold to something of unknown fact as being true, but the manner in which they arrive at that conclusion is different. Theory requires an array of information to work with, and build a mental bridge to the answer. Belief requires nothing, no feats of partial truths or bases in reality. It asks for nothing, seeks nothing. It is instantly the answer and the conclusion, no time in transit. Belief has no foot in reality. It stands upon its own existence, and it is the sole authority from which its particular view of truth is right. Belief has many layers. The mind, the heart, the soul, they all have the power to believe, and a man can find himself doing something that his mind believes is right, but his heart or soul does not. And likewise, a man can starve because his heart or soul has made the decision to feed his neighbor's children instead of himself. Something his mind believes is wrong, but his heart thinks is right, while his soul trusts that the moral will have what he needs, so that all three can disagree, or not agree completely, or even agree in complete peace. Intelligence, sense and disposition are the sole elements of human awareness and being. All aspects of our conscious existence hover in this parallel field of possibility. Each of us is intelligent, respectively so, but our mind is convinced, given to agreement. Our logic and our rationalization and our beliefs and our opinions, all exist to us as sure. We accept them, believe them, live our lives convicted that they are right. We cannot see anything that we are not looking at, and we can never believe anything except what we believe. Truth for us is not the essence of a thing, or the properties of all things in existence, but that which we are personally convicted of. We can change our mind, but whatever our mind believes is true, is going to be the full extent of our understanding on the matter, and the limitation of our understanding of truth. Limitations. Humanity is at the mercy of its own comprehension. It advances, or it stalls, or goes backwards, according to what it understands, how it understands it, and how it relates to that understanding. In any manner of diligence or campaign, as beings of intellectual, moral, social, geographic, and personal regard and respect, the constitution of self includes morals, character, religion, and belief. And these, like money, have value and an integrity. Religion and beliefs are separate issues. Beliefs deal with the circumstances of reality, and how we relate to them from a personal involvement, or empathy. Religion deals with the question of cosmic origin, divine life, and man's submission, place, and humility, in the grand order of reality, where supreme intelligence is doubtless and sure. Be it self, man, gods, or God, as being the deity of the religion. Character is the degree of our sway in the face of compromise and contest. It is the firmness of our stance on any challenge or topic, and our unshakable footing in the face of wrong. Lack of character is fear, self-preservation, and spinelessness. In personal government, or any institution of conscious participation and governing, morals are the principles that underlay our beliefs, provide foundations, and offer strong direction when no clear view is available. Morals are our most basic understanding. Before any interaction of worldly pace has influenced our structured understanding of what is right, wrong, or fair. Judgment. To establish truth, we must establish falsities. To establish falsities is to exercise the muscles of judgment. Judgment is a necessity to human understanding, a part of our awareness and development, and essential to all our relationships. To judge is to suppose / conclude / or impose a conscious frame around an otherwise invisible, possibly non-existent, mechanic or dynamic of something's existence. When lines are drawn, they create a visual representation, giving the outline of form to something that is not real within the framework of historical reality. Like the borders of a city. In like manner of representation, lines are drawn in thoughts and communications, creating an intangible framework that is tangible to the mind. As defined by judgment. Frame. To frame something is to establish the practical borders and boundary of everything existing within that boundary, such as a yard. But you can also have multiple frames within a larger frame, such as a yard with a house with a family of 4 in a specific neighborhood within a specific city that has a unique name. It depends purely on the angle of your consideration as to what frame you are looking at. The mind, the emotion, and the disposition of a person are all parts of our psychological person and framing, with each characteristic behaving, perceiving, and concluding differently. Everything that makes us able to function in reality, thought, feeling, and expression, are part of our general psychological frame. Psychological frame, it is the totality of our conscious framework. In the essence of relationship. How we interpret our relationship to everything, to ourself, and everything, to ourself. That is, what makes us an emotional mess, the hailstorm of thoughts, a social deviant, or a well-rounded individual. And it is perhaps a deeper, more complex aspect of our personality and subconscious, to the point of being an uncharted mystery. Despite what human catalog may suggest. The war within, in some ways, our psychological makeup is the war within, between rational and irrational, sanity and insanity. What's morality, will, and every will and uncharted territory of our deeper conscious levels, all trying to play together, and get along. And that frame, or playground, is the breaking point. It is the borders of what a person can tolerate emotionally, mentally, or principally. The borders of what a person has subconsciously elected to be acceptable or unacceptable. Not as beliefs and principles, but as the gears and cogs of our function, person, and personality. Trust, to trust self, is natural, wise, and a learned instinct. As we know by discovery, that we can't trust others. To trust in self, is foolish, deadly, and the groundworks of failure, corruption, and self-deception. It is also the subconscious practice of self-righteous religion, dictatorship, and every intelligent ration that justifies violence and murder. Trust is a queer sensation. Not physical in origin. Not emotional in origin. Not an aspect of intelligence, or a focus of our person. Not a state of mind. Not a psychological outlook. Yet, experienced, sure as standing in the rain. It is also a trainable reflex. That is impaired or adapted by prejudice, emotion, environment, state of mind, and so on. Trust, is the religion we are born with. Before any doctrines, traditions, or preaching. It's the magic and mystery of our universal connection and foundation. Psyche, to be aware, is to experience, to be vulnerable, to be in the vastness of reality, not as a lifeless thing, but as thought, as feeling. It is to be more than matter or molecule. Chapter 3, The Mind. The agriculture of the mind. The mind grows. Thoughts root. Thoughts reach. If focused, thoughts blossom. They can articulate structure, concentrate reason, anticipate expiration, dedicate deduction, deconstruct explanation, and extrapolate more pure intelligence than formerly possessed. The heart grows. Emotion and sentiment, in any form, can be nurtured, betrayed, destroyed, or proved. Love to hate, and everything in between, are vulnerable and reactive both, bearing the possibility of death, disease, long life, and fruitfulness alike. Everything about the mind and the heart is organic, with a clearly distinctive difference in their attitude, person, and way. Each, being a rooted transparency of a different philosophy, focus, principle, or government. And dispositionally separate creatures. Both the mind and the heart are rooted in the same grounding soil of the soul. Articulation is the ability to extrapolate, assess, and coordinate relevant information into a comprehensible understanding. Noting mechanic, property, and relevance. Articulate thought is a resource of one's person and intelligence both, as it deals with relationship and information both, transcending the borders of fact and theory, and lending itself to religious and moral debate, which plain intelligence cannot, as it suffers from an absence of comprehension and understanding. Articulation involves all aspects of conscious being, utilizing every avenue of thought, feeling, interpretation, and conscience, to the evaluation of integrity, possibility, and application, and the re-evaluating of personal reflection, inflection, and objectiveness, and, to jump ahead, the reconstitution of person, themselves, against all odds, adversaries, and private conflicts. Articulation is the master motor skill of conscious awareness, exceeding intellect on many levels, as it operates in both our perceived awareness and our subconsciousness, preserving the essence of relative, which intellect cannot possess or sense, but articulation can. Articulation is in many ways our stabilizer, our balance, the foundation of our equilibrium, that gives our sanity a more uniform disposition, so that consciously, we don't topple to one extreme or another, as falling over to our left or to our right, as we walk. Process, it is a passive application of all understanding, into an employed furtherance of usefulness. 8. Handling of properties, as to catalog, category, and sort, for forward betterment. The function of process is parallel to every thought, measure and sense, continuously scanning reality and self, and creating a forward architecture of articulations. Process is a deeply involved escalation of thought that exists and exceeds routine thought patterns. To pronounce new thought, more successful in context, comprehension, internal relate, and utility. Process is a moving graduation of all underdeveloped understandings and relative observations, that never completely settles down into any form, but grasps formation with steadiness and certain humility, to the overcoming of self, in generalized and accepted simplicity, and apathy of thought. It is not the same as motivation, but occupies the marching rest and advancement of self. That is grossly uncharacteristic to cultured and mentored society, rejecting cycles, staleness, and redundancy. Biological reality, and structured articulation, are both growing, and both membership of process. Development, is an operation, a segmented coalition of light material, into a bound membership, created and built up step by step, integer per motion, and continued as so, until its conclusion. Conscious application, is a directed line of focus, ambition, consideration, or investment. Observation, is a study, the witness of anomaly, pattern, and event. A note of difference, similarity, and vivid apparent vitality. Deduction, is an objective screening of all that is observed, a painful sifting of all the sharp angles, and a scrutiny of properties and measures. Growth, is a process of maturity, an attainable potential, that is reached for, and the purpose of all process, to establish or reimagine the potential of resident maturity. Learning, is a process that facilitates growth, maturity, and the evolution of development, where the conscious reality of the person gains power to dismiss perception that it had to that point, that have become useless, faulty, or false, to rewrite its beliefs, to reassess its understandings, to become aware of things that are new to it. Response is a form of relationship, an action, associated to the item being reacted to. It is an expression, conceived with the person and personality that is reacting, born of the relationship that person and personality have to the item being reacted to, according to the way in which the person and personality identify the item they are reacting to. Overall, the conscious plane of the individual is a mystery, a collection of personal and impersonal writings, written by perception, recorded upon tablets of organic essence. And once there, the reader, being self, begins to read and interpret the variables of experience, the fundamentals of reason, and the dynamics of selfish, selfless, and moral argument and objection. It is mutual, it is exclusive, and it is dramatic, with rewards that reach the greatest heights of happiness, and the deepest depths of sorrow, agony, and regret. It is an experience of constant mystery, that cannot be repeated, because there is only one mind per life. Skill, it is any ability that originates with humanity, that the individual person has practiced to a point of greater function, so that it is superior to general ability, being more sufficient, better, and of greater efficiency. In relation to its original purpose, skill is learned. Anything that humanity can do is an ability. Anything that humanity can learn is an ability that they can apply. Application is the engaging of interest and effort through any ability. Mental, analytical, physical, and sensual. Allure is a skill. Persuasion is a skill. Thought is a skill. Awareness, in general and in detail, is a skill. Speech is a skill. Diet is a skill. Observation is a skill. Exercise is a skill. Charity is a skill. Friendships, relationships, memberships are a skill. Tolerance is a skill. Endurance is a skill. Love, in the strength and the range of the pureness of the affection, is a skill. Accuracy is a skill. Attendance is a skill. Time is a skill. Punctuality is a skill. And all the many manners of human interactions, in any media, on any platform, of any kind, are a skill. In the fullness of practical definition, everything that we do through conscious means are skills. And we learn to do them. Learning, it is development of sense. Within opportunity, means, and availability, to the conclusion of ability. It is an invisible form of growth, that is entirely organic. It is specific to whatever area of person or body that is responsible for the ability that is being developed. By stimulation of the affected cells, muscles, memories, or whatever cognitive mysteries that are associated with sense, function, recollection, observable reach, and skill are increased in their respective volume. Like words, added to a book that is still being written. Weakness is a learned skill. Our many vices are learned, honed, developed skills. We have trained our weakness, made them strong, taking natural vulnerabilities that exist to our individual person, and exercising their faults, like the excessive bending of a branch, backwards and forwards, until it loses all internal strength to resist the motion, and snaps under the pressure. We are naturally faulted, but we are mechanically weak, created by repetition of endorsed flaws, handled by manual efforts that escape the boundaries of natural fault. Self-deception is an apt and sharply trained skill. Self is a cunning strategist. Its deceptions are bold, portraying itself as a meek and frail creature, helpless and pitiful, for sake of sin and selfishness. Self would have us believe it is handicapped, recklessly abandoned to natural appetites and pleasures, incapable of escape, and required by nature to accept the repetitions of its failure. It is not. It is a liar, skilled and rehearsed, with sly arrangement of words, carefully selected, to the intent of disarming suspicion. What is not real, to question at all, is a remarkable curiosity, as it does not seem logical to consider that anything would lack existence. And to be fair, everything is real, residing in either tangible or intangible form, such as thought, feeling, or the ocean. But to question the genuine reality of the form is relevant to the reason behind the question, such as a medical examination, seeking to determine if a patient is hallucinating or dishonestly misrepresenting the facts of their experience with a prescription medication. And in this, the distinction of what is not real is made, in the sincere facts supporting human communication, as man, in his conversation, is the only source of false reality. Reality is real. Man is real. What is real. But what comes out of the heart and mouth of man is subject to deceit. What is real? A person's imagination can be as real to them as pain or pleasure. Consideration, with their unique perspectives, can be more real to a person than the thing they are concerned about. Anxiety, which is not practical or physical, but sensational, is experienced by the psyche of a person. And to the psyche, like the motivations of love, it is as genuine as walking through the doorway, while holding the door's handle, and pushing the door open as you walk. What gives reality its structure, volume, and measurement, is real. What torments the heart and mind is real. What intrigues, motivates, and arrests the conscious senses is real. What is imagined, fantasied, or wished for, is real. What is, as perceived or experienced, is as real, as what is, by documented measure or noted tangibles, is real. Void, nothingness, and non-existence are also real, by the measure of their consideration, such as divorce, abandonment, abortion, deletion, and expulsion. To imagine murder, is to imagine the act, the sensation, the motivation, the plot. And while it is not realized upon the victim, in the flesh, it is realized in the exercise of our thought, in cell memory, nerve, and conscious application. In that our imagination, acting like salivation in the digestion process, is preparing muscle response and conscious coordination of thought, instinct, and ingenuity. Even if we have not done it before, or do not plan on doing so. Just as wanting to do something, is experienced as an emotional fact, and the want of the emotion, is genuinely weighing on the reality of our person, as intangible, but sincere. Distinction between what is actual, what is virtual, and what is imaginary, does not exclude the thing from being existent, but rather, from being made up of matter, having weight, volume, and existence outside the realm of human sensation and imagination. Human reality is different from existence, in that man is a thinker, man is a feeler, and man operates according to will and sensation, not according to the laws that govern universal existence. Thought, emotion, and conscious reality are separate realities from the universe. False representation. Man questions, speculates, theorizes, contemplates, brainstorms, formulates, conjures, options, and experiences hardships, breakdowns, confusions, and incremental changes of growth of his continuous total and his conscious person as a whole. Yet reality, outside man's perspective, remains consistently else, and immune to questions and answers. Man, in asking anything, changes nothing but island, but he himself is changed for asking. And any who hear the query are changed with him. Answers do not exist. Not in reality, only truths. But to man, they are, and do exist. Broken bits of an unsolved equation, wholesome enough to fill his belly with whatever morsel of satisfaction he could gain from such sparse pursuits and conversations, but sufficient for nothing. Without truth, they are empty. Truth does not supply man with answers. Truth is truth. It supplies nothing, not even meaning, because it is justified in itself. Beneath it, everything that is not truth grovels for justification, fabricating its worth with envious pity. Man is powerless over truth. His questions do not prevent the answer. By curiosity or by speculation, what belief he has, or what he believes himself to understand, are void of truth, and are in no way equal to truth or to reality. The fabrication, sentimentality, such as memory, is a powerful agent of thought and motivation alike. But it is also a mostly useless and self-defeating thing, prohibiting conscious exploration and growth, and binding progressive direction, like shackles on the ankles. The mind of man is like a grain of sand that is suspended inside the blue of the ocean. It is self-absorbed, but surrounded by a reality that is different from anything it privately holds. Relationship is the engine of all things. It is the basic principle by which reality is governed. Association is the engine of distinction, residing in all consideration, in the walls of reason, intellect, and self-government. Distinction is the radical of awareness, the point of conscious focus, dawn, personality, and conscience, has inspired by wonder and consideration of things, and, as knowing the mechanics of things. The measurement of truth is not opinion, feeling, or private conviction. These, however, are the instruments of our person's reaction to truth. The measurement of truth is sound integrity that is not compromised, and that is universally evident, persistent, despite sentiment or viewpoint, and resistant to corruption or influence. Factor is an integer of reality, a supporting component that is not necessarily whole on its own, and that applies to only what is being considered, while all of reality is fact, and all in it is fact. An item of focus, by itself, is a fact, but the components that form it are factors. Even the non-tangibles, such as the essence of being color, intelligence gathering, or the fortification of intelligence, is the natural collective pursuit of all outsense. Suspicion, fear, and paranoia are the central nervous system of intellectual and perceptual awareness. We are especially sensitive to everything, and particularly suspicious of all others. In action, motive, and speech, peace and ease are not natural to any creature, humans least of all. We resolve our emotional and nervous conflicts, gradually settling into our carelessness and foolhardy ease. We are alert creatures by foundation and structure, aware of the slight and the wrong with great embellished attention, ready to spring into fleet or action, with tense urgency. Laziness in paranoia leads to an easy demise, because suspicious thinking is ravaged with cautious attention. But fearless thought, that suspects nothing, has neither guard for sight, but all in its awareness is selfish, alert to nothing outside its control. So the environment and whatsoever dangers that surround it are unnoticed, and self, all its life through, product of instruction and harassed urging, is oblivious to reality, as it is, and thoughtlessly absorbed in the workmanship of the world's wondrous craft. Buying and selling. The mind exceeds self, and self is better for it. The mind is without known restraint, able to create, to study, and to understand without words or language or communication of any kind. The mind is the entrapping of the flesh, but the flesh is not the entrapping of the mind. The mind can excel without any stimulus from the outside world. It is able to communicate with itself, within its own frame, and to grow stronger for it. Man is a wild intelligence, raw, rich, and eager, passive eased by trust, placed without security, and swayed like golden grass in the wind, by motion of leadership, fraud, guardianship, majority, pressure, peers, and culture. Religious and political scheme impose the greatest and most direct influence, and propagate the most internal struggle of conscience. We want to trust, and all teeters on the questionable reliability of the subject of our wanted trust. Man's senses are deluded by comfort, dulled by their own quietness, like muscles at rest, that unused, turn from tools in our arsenal, to form fitting baggage. Savage perplexity, humanity, is complex, exceeding all life on earth, at adaptability, functional awareness, and moral vulnerabilities. Possessing instinct, a sense of justice, and an aimless canvas of direction. The race of man is vicious, industrious, and cosmetically challenged, channeling vanity, hatreds, indifference, and war. Compassion is the first casualty in war or survival, as it creates the greatest threat to self-preservation. Compassion, being by nature selfless in its essence, and expressing outward the inner sense of community. Compassion is the element of humanity that most consider the separation of man from beast. But beasts are compassionate, however unfortunate and inopportune to present it, as it is their primary instinct to survive. The mind of man is not trained on compassion. Intellect is irrelevant to the existence of the human race. We need little compassion, however, we need sparingly. Compassion is wasted if the recipient has no respect of the sentiment and effort of those who's understood its universal beauty and spirit. But the nature of humanity is not the nature of the individual, and the spirit of one is not the spirit of each, in well-being and equality. Chapter 4. Reality. Earth is home to billions of people. The reality that surrounds them is the same, common to all. Yet the people of Earth live in a world and reality all their own. Their beliefs are individual, diverse, one from the other. Yet each one believes they alone know the truth, convinced that all others are wrong. Reality awareness, most distinguishing of all man's inherent characteristics, is his ability to recognize all that exists as a collective unit of space and energy, whose relationship and exchange is known as reality. Reality, as a place, surrounds us all. In every direction it is infinite, engulfing everything matter and space and creating the motions of time. Every able-minded being is aware of reality. No difference in religion, creed, or country expels its existence from shared understanding and agreement. Absent perspective, reality is a whole, universal, all-inclusive, containing all known and unknown existence. A mysterious landscape of matter and time, and anything else not considered. But we never leave the island of consider. Reality is unchanged in its factual presence, no matter the angle of view. Whereas perspective is the matter of our individual, and is not universal. Perspective is personal, the rendered combination of line of sight and personal conviction. Our questions can't never be answered, because they don't exist to reality, they exist to us. Where everything is not everything, but the matter of perspective equation. The dismissal of truth that prefers granules of sand, but denies the beach. Perspective is a wildly deceptive and arrogant assumption, based solely on interpretation. An interpretation based on our sense of value. A sense perverted, gauged with bias and a severe misrepresentation of fact. 3 dogs, all brothers, live on the same farm. One dog is forced to fend for himself, while the other 2 are given shelter and a division of lawn and accommodation. The dog who is forced to fend eats only if he can find it. He has no shelter from the weather, no love shown him, and no one to console him. Of the 2 dogs shown love, one is given all he can eat, with no provision skimped. He has everything, in abundance, to overflowing. The other dog is given only enough. He has a moderate amount of accommodation, the falling apart shed to live in, no blankets for warmth, an occasional bit of attention. Attention that is kind, but very brief, and he eats only what is given him, and what is given him is just enough to keep him alive. He has less than the one, and more than the other. Each of these dogs will gauge and weigh their own value, each seeing it through the attentions given them. The one dog will curse the day he was born, and understand in himself that you get nothing you don't take. He also has no experience with joy or love, and wouldn't know what they were if he saw them. The dog who has everything will assume everything, and have no understanding of want. It's not his fault that he has everything. But how does he understand reality? He has no way to reason, no way to evaluate anything. It all seems poised to serve him. The dog who has only enough will weigh his worth with a sense of want, but a gratitude that neither of the others can know. Because he has been given little, while everything is within his sight, he will understand in himself that his provisions are equal to his worth, and his worth is his place. He will cast himself, seeing all else, through that cast, through the limitation forced on him. Each of the 3 dogs is living a light. Each is denied the truth, and each has assumed that reality and their self is what it is, through the eyes of their experience, with none of them able to see beyond themselves. Each trapped in the unique line of sight imposed on them. Perceived reality is a mental concept, an imagination that is built around perceived understanding of the mechanics and dynamics of known and unknown existence. But it is flawed. It cannot, no matter how hard we try, encompass the full range of reality's actual substance and makeup. We must assume an idea of what reality is, and we cannot guarantee our understanding of reality as fact and true, making reality a matter of personal acceptance, and declaring that each and every one of us live in our own perception of reality, with no 2 persons' understandings being identical, or certain. Personal reality alone, we reside in reality, cut off, and isolated. The universe surrounds us, but we cannot know it. We live in our own world, trapped in our own person, separated from everything and anyone. Certain reality exists, but it does not exist to us. It exists around us, but it does not exist to us, or in us. And any state of reality that we perceive to be true, is going to be flawed and incomplete, no matter how true it seems, because our awareness is cut off from its true being. Common reality The painting sits on display in an art gallery. No one knows the painter. They all look, all reason. Everyone sees the same painting. Yet all have a different reaction to it. They search themselves in the quiet of their minds and hearts, to know what it is they feel of the painting. Hatred, contempt, love, admiration. It doesn't matter. Observation doesn't take the place for fact. And truthfully, no matter how beautiful or awkward the painting is to us, the colors and the placements on the canvas are simply factors that exist, regardless to admiration and criticism. We may all look differently on reality, and according to our own feelings and thoughts, see what we see of it. But truth remains, reality is reality. It is the same reality, no matter who is looking at it. It doesn't belong to any of us. To me, it's a masterful montage of rhythm and dance. It's like a beautiful but complex painting, full of color and pattern, the subject of criticism and praise from people of every nation and ethnic background. Careless reality, reality ours with imposing regal and eternal allure, that interrogates our deep, invokes our awe, and leaves us intellectually and articulately speechless, but bold with wonder and astonishment. The point of no return, the universe, and all that is in it, is made of energy. Energy that exists in the motion of form, power, and source. To be very general, every piece of it, and everything in reality, is energy. Form, this energy, has a tangible body, and requires energy, in the form of power, to maintain that body. Power, power, is the energy that empowers form to function. Source, source, is where power is generated. Sometimes a combination of powers itself. These three are an intermingled cycle that allows them to maintain each other in a perpetual union of exchange, such as life and death. Or more clearly, the life and death of any of the three, especially form. It's a constant and universal ballet. The formation, breakdown, dispersal, and reconstructing of molecular reality. All energy is powered by a source, but every source is made able by another opposing or complementary exchange. You are unable to break the cycle without creating a void, which does exist. But the point is, there is always need of a different energy, different power, different source. The underlying structure of reality requires a source, power and energy, that has no beginning, needs no outside influence to maintain its own existence, and that points to the possibility of divinity. But who could define such a presence? Let alone prove it. Everything comes from something, and something is eternal. The question is, what? Of course that's just speculated theory, but who can afford to ignore looking into it? There is no such thing as eternal gas. Gas is molecular, and requires the same consideration to form that anything molecular does. You simply cannot escape the notion that something complex and possibly mental is there prior to structure. This is the point where trying to define reality takes a turn from fact to theory. The breaking point, in the interest of truth, one searches for fact and clears the weight of unessential debris. Humanity faces a fact-knowing handicap. It cannot, however, have all the facts. Instead, it constructs the most clear, though incomplete, picture it can, from what is able to be gathered. Truth-seeking is a mental war on reality, with a lot of walking, arguing, and mud wrestling. And it happens to every person that takes on this war, that they find themselves face to face with an unknown. They lack the power to engage, or measure in weight whatsoever. It's like a person who has set out to walk across the greatest desert in the world. They have a strategy, a plan, all the essentials they can carry. But the way is tedious, with hardship and challenge always holding a conversation with each other, with the persevering trek-er as their interpreter. The limits of endurance are pressed to breaking. Will and surrender are fought with strength that doesn't exist. It becomes a contest of no longer existing, just to spite the very romanticism of not existing. The truth seeker digs in running on fumes. They push through, having turned into something more than will or machine, or even spite of self, only to find themselves staring face to face with the deepest blue ocean in all the world. Fate laughs at them. Insanity breaks into their mind. the greatest asset and instinct of survival. As the salt in the water forbids them from drinking it, and now everything attacks reason, the desert, the sun, the ocean, the air and even their own beaten two-pulse soul. It's the single point where everything stops, and time and reality suddenly conspire against you, ridiculing you with an impossibility that doubles as fact. And you have to accept it, even though its weight is unbearably cruel upon your conscience. Chapter 5, The Question of God. The unknown mystery of God. From birth, all that is a mystery, and we, piece by piece, resolve the unknown. Ever clearer is our puzzle's picture, its image, chopped and scattered, revealing only enough to show it is limitless, dumbfounding us, still with awe. Man pushes toward answers, his efforts, genuine, and gaining. Understanding advances, the universe courts his attention, their relationship grows, and they become more and more familiar with each other. Life, where we stop, the verse around us continues. That verse is a mix of parts living and parts non-living, and the presence of cells allow us the opportunity to reverse construct our understanding of all things living, giving us a more clear picture of the way life is established, and the relationship of life to reality. Cells are microscopic organisms, currently the smallest known unity of life, and the building material of all other life on Earth. Every part of any plant or terrestrial being on Earth is physically constructed by cells. They are the engineers of life on this planet. The origin of information, reality, considered apart from biology, contains no instruction or information. Yet, cells do. And they generate the whole of biological existence, least to greatest, with every property inscribed into the mysterious function of cells. Biological existence conforms to factual provable instructions inscribed within the reality of cells. And cells are the delivery system of that information. Stirring the madness within to question, where did this information come from? The information in cells is like an archive of books, written with a beginning, an end, and a lofty story in the middle. How, though, does this intuitive machine exist in the reality and the universe that is seemingly outside the known mystery of biology? We cannot see where this instruction is sent from, or what is writing it. But it is written on the cell, in whatever computing dimension of reality. And like passengers on a train, these instructions exit at their stop, and all go their separate ways, to do whatever job it is they have, and go wherever it is that they were intended to go, as instructed them, before they got on the train. Cells operate with baffling alertness to the laws of reality, biological limitations, conformity, and preparedness for possibilities. Yet, a man on the edge of a cliff does not spawn wings, nor does 1,000 years' worth of men on the cliff's edge produce the faintest sign of wings sprouting. Not one new bone, not one alternative cell, with alternative instructions, for genetically creating wings. Not one feathered or bat-like appendage. The breakdown of cellular creation, an examination of biological realization, using the human body as a model. Not a step-by-step process, but an observation of practical stages. In general, the event of formation is divided into 4 stages: cell unit, cell community, cell network, and final product. An outline of these stages: individual cells become a community of cells, then a network of communities, and finally, take the form we are most familiar with, a completed terrestrial body. Cell unit, an individual, free-living, microscopic organism. Cell community, a community of cells form in which cell units cease to function as their own and take on existence as a collective unity. A concentrated formation such as skin tissue or an organ would be an example of a cell community. Cell network, communication that takes place between 2 or more separate cells, or 2 or more interfaced communities, both in the form of pre-creation of a community, and post-formation, when communities maintain an active connection. Final product, while it's easiest to think of an actual terrestrial being, that being itself is a separate form, for which the final product is host to. The final product is the finished endeavor of all those cells' efforts. It is the combined interface of all the cells' communities as a working living, whole, terrestrial wake, After the final product is complete, the mystery of terrestrial awareness takes place. That awareness is not microscopic in its nature or interaction, and it does not communicate with the parts that built and maintain its fleshly vessel. Yet both are living, and both have consciousness. They appear to coexist, but are not one in will, purpose, or thought, to which I suggest they are two beings, dependent on each other for survival. The will and an intentional host. Our bodies are designed, engineered, without our conscious input, and done so by intention, with overwhelming evidence. The many systems necessary to give rise to conscious being, at the level of terrestrial being, exists specifically for that purpose, to give rise to conscious being, and to play host to that being. Purpose is a formula, and apparent motive, in the construction of our bodies, as they are designed with the intention to be host to consciousness on our scale of awareness, not microscopic. Without our conscious being, these bodies we reside in, have no practical point or purpose to exist. They would sit there, with legs and arms and ears and eyes, a nose, a mouth, and no way to feed themselves, making the purpose to be a host, determined prior to the formation of our bodies. Knowledge beyond the cell, unless microscopic cells are somehow universally intelligent, knowledge outside the limits of that held by cells themselves, or even able to be learned through cell-to-cell communication, had to have been present and active in the design of terrestrial reality. All the many specialized purposes to which each terrestrial being's physical counterparts were crafted, could not have been the work of anything less than a globally conscious mind. The reason, DDSIGN of terrestrial hosts, requires advanced awareness, limbs, understanding of the ways in which physics work, oxygen-breathing lungs, knowledge of the chemical makeup of the atmosphere, digestive system, as the body consumes, breaks down, stores and excretes materials, an exterior knowledge of the molecular and chemical composition of items meant to be processed into an energy source, was also needed. These are all things beyond the scope of the atomic, molecular, and cellular existence, but include the deep mechanical knowledge of them all, which suggests there is an advanced intelligence, greater than man's, who possesses a universal awareness, with power that is radiating across all reality. As this intelligence is able to control and direct the microscopic realm of the atomic, molecular, and cellular levels, and doing so, that power has established the life forms on this earth. Evolution and adaptation, the limited pliability of the theory in general, is as follows. Different things close in on a being, threatening its existence, causing the onset of competition, environmental changes, and the serious need to survive. Its life and death hang on the balance of adaptability. It changes or it dies. The theories fit well within the borders of cell communities and networks. It's definitely plausible, and worth attention. But, both take stage after a life form has entered reality, and not before. For evolution and adaptation to work, requires the initial host to be already formed, with aspects of that form modified for advantage and survival. Experience and interaction would over time lead to adaptive functionality. But, to go from single cell, to cell community, to cell network, and finally to terrestrial being, it must be realized that all functionality and purpose for which those forms were brought into existence have no bearing on a host that is not conscious. Evolution cannot exist, not as something controlled by the host, and would require the same living network that created original creation, to make such changes happen, implying that any such real changes were not the ambition of the being, but the application of the Creator. The reason, sealed in our cells, are genetic instructions, which carry all the possibilities our physical hosts have. Instructions that take a single microscopic cell, and create a specific host. A host, built upon those instructions. Every cell in the host, functions within a predetermined parameter, as granted by the instructions inscribed in the original sex cell. If it's not in the instructions, then the cells cannot do it. You have to rewrite their individual function. To imply that evolution is responsible for the life on Earth is ridiculous. Life is uniform, species after species, traits and attributes that are specific, species-wide, with limited adaptation that is not outside the design of the creature. The frog does not become a frog because it thought long and hard on it. The human doesn't grow wings for all their centuries of wanting to fly, and fish with lungs, and bipedal-like fins, obviously meant to be fish who can waddle to another water source. Adaptation, as a part of psychology, is a modifier that we use to apply and calculate our success and failures. But within the world of our mind it has no physical power, only just our physical approach to a problem. Adaptation, in the body, is not something that the consciousness we have is able to control. It occurs as a physically optional reaction. The reaction, already considered in the design of the species, that allow that particular creature to adapt, as intended, when the appropriate scenario is met. The testimony of reproduction, in humans, requires two. The male, a female, and cannot happen as a result of personal evolution, because each parent is a contributor of exact building materials. 26 chromosomes, from each, not from one. That in itself tells us that no single cell could reasonably know that when it was creating the first human, that human would require an entirely separate human to continue its race. Alone, that's an astonishing happening, but not simply another, and chance human. The human, of the opposite sex, as required by our bodies, with their counterparts, already physically compatible for the task. Something that no amount of human ingenuity could have solved on its own. Something planned out and accounted for before there was a human consciousness. As no one human, being the first, could evolve itself into separate humans. Once more, cells show us that these hosts are predetermined, made by intention, and demonstrating considerable consideration by something not human, and something not limited to a single body's knowledge. Original creation is deliberate, testified to by that creation. The purpose of that creation, however, is not clear, as our Creator is a mystery, who seems to be silent, visible only in the structures and working of reality. The intelligence behind creation, all that is a factor that belongs to a single fact. That fact, created and owns all other fact, and is some kind of super-intelligence. The living knowledge, etched across time and creation, intermingled throughout everything molecule and cell and atom, and through them, that intelligence speak to us, declaring the truth, that our Creator exists in them all, universally aware, the most unique, the most powerful, with knowledge of every integer of reality, and silent, with appall and laughter at our superior intellects and godlike self-impressions. The only God is not the sudden accidental formation of intelligence. He is literally, forever, and the universe is merely an expression of his never-ending, infinite power. Before there was anything, he was God. Not the God of fable and fantastic epiphany. The God, who is ever, the only one, the island, who is, before there was any form or shape. He is the only, as with anything that is the only one, he stands apart from all else, singled out, with no confusion, competition, or contrast over his status. The only one, even after he made the ever, Christ he was still the only one, separate, and separated from all else. The unsearchable majesty, the mind's feeble construction of God, is a religious counterfeit, which cannot infer upon man, the living spirit of God's will and fellowship. God is alive, living, unrepresentable by human conjecture, beyond all reach of the imagination. And the error of man is to think we can substitute the grand, unsearchable depths of God's living verse for a self-contained mental abstract. God does not inhabit the fabled body of man's conscious ideas. God is ever, never-ending, never contained, and unfathomable. We have glimpses of his personality, mere sparkles of his actual character, but we cannot create a defined structure for God to live in. He dwells in all place, all time, all space. Beautiful God, the person of God, is so superbly grand, that no one can know his mind. The living power, that secretly permeates every cell, atom and molecule in existence, whose very existence is scoffed at, by the wisest of men. At the best of man's efforts, an idea of his living person, cannot come close. The actual, evades them. Consciousness, at the level on which God exists, could never be fathomed. The Lord of reality is the greatest unknown, never to be known by man. Every ounce of existence plays host to his mind, his sight, and his mystery. A fact that is both true and incomplete, barely considerable, as existence is a mere word spoken, the grain of sand in the limitless power of God. A smile that is at once both action and history. Closing notes time has seen the face of every mortal creature. It has welcomed them into reality, and it has laid them in the ground, wherever they were. Space is not only the true place and substance of all the integers of being, it is also the sponge that drinks back into itself all that is perished from the world of flesh. Man is conceived in darkness. He is clothed in darkness. He is hid in his mother's womb, in darkness. He is without sight all the days of his life. And in death, darkness will claim him back into itself. The weight of conviction crushes the heart of man with riddle and query. And he cannot help but to ask, why? Fires have raged. Men have died horrible deaths. Wars and famines and sufferings unimaginable have all come to be. Because of that question. Because of what it means. The essence of its answer and its origin. And the interpretation that humankind have separately devised. We are a slave to the question of why. Bound to it. In every way. Without escape. There is no liberation. The mystery that inhabits the answer of why suppresses all that is everywhere. Because all are profoundly, absolutely, and exclusively ignorant of the truth. Truth sits atop reality, God. With all exception and all knowledge, it is perfect, whole, and lacking nothing. In the wild, we, who are beneath it, are as filthy, loathsome, stray dogs, stuck in the reins of relentless misery. With all our worth and understanding, clothed in perpetual vagrancy. We are ashamed of our own selves, hating that we were even born, and lost in the wilds of meaningless existence, with no sense of reason or hope. Reflection, the mystery of the being, to say the least. The action of becoming aware is a moment in conscious life where perception awakens to take on a role and responsibility of programming itself. Instantly perceiving, without understanding. Awareness is an ability to perceive. Perception is a conscious filter that screens all that awareness is sensitive to, instantly, and every moment, and recreates the total experience, so that it is not one giant emotion or sense, but many, separated, and respective experiences. We sense in measure. It is a digestive process that assimilates the whole into lesser and usable units, unique and respective to the way that perception has filtered them. Being, awareness, and perception are different, have different starting points, and different structural essences. Being is the life itself. Awareness is the whole of perceived reality, of self, and else. And perception is the mechanic of channeled interpretation that strives to be more efficient at its dissection of reality experienced. The mystery of being cannot fully be explained or understood. It begins on a level that we are hardly able to perceive. With the machines of organic engineering, an opening to our scrutiny, at the birth of helplessness. Once exposed to reality, the foundations of thought and feeling begin to extract detail. And nervousness, anxiousness, and vulnerability act upon the conscious, like the first inhale of air acts upon the lungs of an infant. Through perception, awareness senses surrounding, senses need, senses the vulnerability of its person, and senses every measure between both comfortable and uncomfortable. And yet, it cannot be rid of this great and outlandish experience. Its immersion into an overwhelming and over-the-top nightmare of visceral overload and exposure. Once born, awareness cannot turn it off, cannot ignore it, because it has been placed so deeply within the space of reality, that like a lone bird afloat upon the surface of the ocean, with the comfort of land infinitely absent from all sight, it is helpless. Such is true of all life within the realms of mortality. It will gradually assess the reality of things, growing more complete in its perception of possibilities and absolutes, the things that can affect, the things that cannot, what can be changed, what cannot, what it can do, what it cannot. Learning is a process that facilitates growth, maturity, and the evolution of development, where the conscious reality of the person gains power to dismiss perceptions that it had to that point that have become useless, faulty, or false, to rewrite its beliefs, to reassess its understandings, to become aware of things that are new to it. Response is a form of relationship, an action, associated to the item being reacted to. It is an expression, conceived within the person and personality that is reacting, born of the relationship that person and personality have to the item being reacted to, according to the way in which the persona and personality identify the item they are reacting to. Overall, the conscious is a mystery, a collection of personal and impersonal writings, written by perception, recorded upon the tablets of organic essence. And once there, the reader, called self, begins to read and interpret the variables of experience, the fundamentals of reason, and the dynamics of selfish, selfless, and moral agreements and objections. It is mutual, it is exclusive, and it is dramatic. With rewards that reach the greatest heights of happiness, and the deepest depths of sorrow, agony, and regret. It is an experience of constant mystery that cannot be repeated. Every man has a question for reality, and whether he asks aloud or not, his heart will speak, and will say, "We are miserable creatures, and all existence is like company," and the voice of inspiration will say, "Who is like God?" About the author. Jeremiah Dillon is a writer who writes about the things he feels or fears or even loves. He's touched by a gripping connection to his innermost senses, and articulates these swell storms with graphic expressions that are able to pierce soul and conscience alike. He's battled depression all his life, grappled with thoughts and insatiable impulses to commit suicide on more than one occasion, and faced the questions of God, reality, meaning and pointlessness, with equal and unforgiving lunacy. The state of anyone's mind is arguable, and that is certainly true of this author. But he stands firm in his beliefs, and presents confident support for his views. He believes in a living unanimous God, a wholly begotten Christ, duty to life, and above all vanity, the call to be decent and kind to each other. In further examination of this author's stance on life, he believes in the spirit of Christ rather than Christianity, and in the spirit of humanity, rather than the individual. He prompts the heart of compassion and decency, over and against the world as we know it, that is armed with both carefulness and boldness, patient, not anxious, true, not reactive, and certain in its engagement, not timid, not apathetic, and not scared of enemy or death. His written words are inspired by great reverent impressions, horrible lowly anxieties, and a gruesome detest of all that strikes the soul with chilling testimony of the inhumanity of those versed, vested, and engrossed in deceptions and lack of concern for life, as they strive to control the domestic engine of the conquered compliance of all government and rule and people of the world, by whatever name or organization they hide behind. He counts them as his enemies. Confession, creed, manifesto, and all that such stuff. The following is Jeremiah's message. A man can be proven wrong, always. But God is, despite all of existence and creation, and is not wrong, but consistent and true. Yet, here we are, wrong, at every turn, justified in our own minds and hearts, and nowhere to turn in this reality for truth. Meaning, is conquered by one's own heart, because it is the only place of reference that value can be obtained or assigned. But truth is not objective or critical or assigned for perspective, though reality is purely the skepticism of perspective. No, truth is something altogether its own reality, wholly preserved and testified by its own counsel. We have no truth, and we seek endlessly to know why, or to know where. Yet, there is no satisfying this emptiness or this void, because only truth can solve such a requirement. And we, as we have always known, have no truth in ourself. That is why we are always looking outward, and forward, and to this, that, or others, seeking to rest our soul on some immortal plane of sovereignty. Our only rest is truth. But we cannot approach truth unless something in our heart can speak true. And that is often exactly what it means to be repentant. To simply turn a broken heart toward truth, and let what is true be said by the soul. And in this begins the dialogue. That truth, who is outside existence, can enter our being, because we have made a way for his word. So long as there is truth in our heart, we may always enter into that dialogue. That what is true in our heart may speak with he, who is that eternal truth, who creation calls God and Father. And in this truth, we may know him that is true. And he may know us,